Hello, Kaiju United, readers, listeners, viewers. It is me, Jacob. I'm here with Luke Sparke, the director and writer of Primitive War, an upcoming dinosaur war film that you may have seen us post a lot about. There's a lot of buzz going around. Luke, real quick, did you want to introduce yourself for those that might not know who you are?
Yeah, sure. I'm, as you said, Luke Sparke. I'm the director of Primitive War. I've directed, this is my sixth or seventh feature film. I'm sort of an up and coming director down here in Australia. I've directed sci fi movies, crime movies. My background before directing films has been working for mainly historic military films in the behind the scenes costume art department. So I worked on Steven Spielberg's The Pacific and Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, X Men Origins Wolverine, and a bunch of others out here. And that sort of led me to, I've always wanted to direct films, and that led me to it. And I used all my on set knowledge to launch myself back in 2014 into directing. I've been doing it ever since.
But now it makes so much more sense. Handling these war films with lots of military action. That's really cool.
Yeah, I've obviously, it's where I've come from, and I haven't actually done a war film, so I wanted to wait for the right time because they're very hard to do, and I wasn't going to do something half-assed as my first one. So this is the first one, and the market trends and everything changes. In the '90s was great for war films after Private Ryan. It's dipped a little bit recently, but combining dinosaurs with war, I thought was a great launching the pad at the moment.
So, how did this project come about? It's based on a book. Um, I'm blanking on the author, Ethan Pettis, I believe. Please correct me if
Correct.
I'm incorrect on
That's
that.
correct. That's correct.
Sweet, awesome. So it's based on this book that a lot of people love. It's just had this big following over the past years of its release. Did you read it beforehand, or how did you discover this book that intrigued you so much?
Yeah, it was just by chance. I was just scrolling through social media one night, and there was an ad popped up, and it was for I believe, the comic or the Kickstarter for the comic or something about the comic, and the cover art was um, the main character Baker fighting a Utah raptor in the jungle, and I was like, "What is this?" And I clicked on it and read about it, and I ordered the book and read it, and I got in touch with Ethan throughout that period and said that I was interested. I sort of had another author was pitching me another book, not similar but with creatures, very different to this one. But it was either one or the other, and I had a meeting with the team here at Spark Films and sort of did a big pitch meeting about current up and coming productions that I'm working on. And I was like, you can have this or you can have this, and everyone liked the Primitive War idea. And it fit with our business and fit, as I said, fit with my past and everything else. And and we negotiated with Ethan. We got the rights, and I started to write the script. So just by chance is the answer. By chance.
That's crazy. Usually it's like, oh, I read the book and I loved it. I was so inspired, but it's kind of cool that it just kind of happened.
Oh, I mean, obviously all that too. Yes, it just happened that way. And of course, when I read the book, I just knew I could see it in my head, how to shoot it and how to turn it into a 2 hour movie, because just like every book, books are a lot longer than what movies can be. So I just knew when I finished it that I could do something with it.
So I did want to segue just a little bit and ask you about the film industry in Australia. When I talk to a lot of directors, I love getting their insight into differences in each country's film industry. And Australia's got quite the film industry going on. Are there any stark differences between, like, a traditional Hollywood model in Australia, or is everything kind of the same?
I think, I mean, look, generally it's all the same in the film industry. Obviously, out here is a little different, and that's why a lot of blockbusters come out here to film, is because maybe it's not as unionized, it's not as I mean, it's hardlined as it is shooting in America. Everyone out here kind of just gets the job done. The crew are kind of known just to get in. People like Chris Hemsworth and George Miller have always commented that our crew out here is just, we all just kind of get stuck in and everyone helps out and makes it happen. And that's true on any independent feature, even in America. But even on the bigger jobs that I've been on over here, the crew are definitely a lot more laid back to get the jobs done. but it's like any independent feature, because this film is just like a massive. It's a big independent film. It's not a little independent film, but it's still independent. So we all had to rely on each other as we were making it, and bring in people that just wanted to see it get done the right way. But yeah, generally speaking, the industry over here is very very happy to help, and our locations over here really are great, because you can in a hour radius you can be in very different sort of location looks, which helps for films like this and like other films that they shot over here.
As I was reading some of the details you guys have been sharing behind the scenes and stuff, one thing that there were two things that stuck out to me, but we'll start with the first one. It was the real sets and locations that you guys were utilizing. You guys built real sets. You were like really filming in the jungle. You don't really see a lot of that nowadays in a lot of major movies. Um, you talk a little bit about that and maybe some of the challenges that come with like on set location filming and real set building and all that kind of fun stuff.
Every challenge is the answer. We made a conscious decision early on, and I was mentioning this to another interview that I did recently. Of you look at the first Jurassic Park movie, which is amazing still as a piece of filmmaking and the effects and everything else, but the T Rex attack on the cars in that film, they had to film that in a studio specialized because of the rig of the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and it had to be in the studio and all that kind of stuff. So we made a conscious decision to go film this on location to make everything as real as it can be. What flows on from that, obviously, is then the questions of how do we bring dinosaurs to in the middle of a valley or in the middle of a set, in the middle of a in the jungle somewhere else. So all that kind of flows on. So the challenge for us was to get to these remote locations and film them as per the book, as per what happens in the story, them being stuck in a valley in the middle of nowhere and they can't get out of it. And yeah, once that happens, every challenge comes up. You got rain, and of course, every film hits this problem. As soon as you go to shoot, suddenly it's like, oh, a massive storm's coming. Oh, it's a rainy season. It's unpredictable weather. It's so all of it happened to us. We had a week where we were like the furthest out that we went into this literally valley that no one has ever been into, basically. And the roads that we had to build completely just turned to mud. We couldn't get up the hill. There was conversations on Unibase every day, just saying like, "Are we just going to pull the pin? Are we going somewhere else?" It was like everyone's flipping out and freaking out, and you have to be strong. And I'm the EP of this movie. I'm the director. I'm the editor. I'm the production designer. I'm doing all these different things. So like I was, the one everyone was turning to, and myself and my other producer, who's also the first AD, just had to stay strong and just have to, sort of lead the team and make sure that everyone knows what's going on. And we just had to quickly think on our feet and just went, well, what if we moved over here for a little bit while we got the roads built, and when we come back and the roads are fixed, and then we'll go over there for lunch. And it was just a really, really hard couple of weeks to be able to do all this, but it looks great in camera, and as you can see from the BTS, it looks really good. And we sit back in the edit room and we're like, oh, at least it was worth it. We had to eventually bring in some actual military trucks, like 8-wheel massive wheels trucks that don't get bogged, and we had to bring them in speciality just to load cameras on them. And then it took ages to load. Everyone was loading cameras onto this truck and loading makeup on the truck and loading all their equipment on the truck. Then the truck would then go up this hill, and we're like waiting around, all the actors waiting around. And then once it's going to get off the truck, and then I was like, let's just shoot, let's hurry up and shoot. And it's just time, and the lights, you're losing the light, and it's crazy.
War movies or Vietnam movies. Did you look at any of those? Because I know in some of the promo materials you talk about how you wanted the grittiness and the intensity of survival that comes from a war picture, with your dinosaurs. Were there any like war films, Vietnam resources that you looked at, or just anything of that sort for this movie?
Yeah, look, Platoon and Apocalypse Now were the two sort of go-to movies visually for me, as I was referencing it throughout pre-production. And then I was able to bring in people I've worked with, like Captain Dale Dye, who did the military advising for Platoon, who co-wrote Platoon. He did Private Ryan, The Band of Brothers, The Pacific. So I worked with him a couple of times, and I was able to reach out. And he's a Vietnam vet himself, so I was able to reach out to him, and he's an accomplished writer because he wrote Platoon, co-wrote Platoon with Oliver Stone. So I was able to reach out and use my connections with him to sort of give him a look at the script, taking the dinosaur factor away, and said, "Hey, can you just focus on the military factor and give me some notes? Can you give me any advice?" And he went through the script and the book and was like, this wouldn't happen, and while you have to sort of say, well, it's a dinosaur movie. I wanted to make sure that it was as real as it can be for veterans, because these guys are representing real people who would be in the military in Vietnam. So we don't want to make a mockery of them either. So that was important to me to keep those guys involved and making sure that everything was correct. And and referencing those movies, because I wanted it to be a war film with dinosaurs, not a dinosaur film that happens to have soldiers running around being silly and just kind of gets campy. So I wanted to feel like the cast of Platoon have walked into Jurassic Park. It was my kind of go-to as I was filming the film.
Well said. On the other end, there's been a lot of talk in terms of like our follower base about some of the promo materials and comments about the scientific nature of the dinosaurs. In regards, I think the exact verbiage, just so we can clarify here, is more scientifically accurate than most movies. Because I mean, science is always evolving, right? It might change tomorrow. So can you comment on that balance?
Yeah, look, I'll comment on it for sure. It was definitely something I kept saying on set. I kept saying to people throughout the production is we want to make sure that these dinosaurs aren't cloned. They're not DNA. You know what I mean? Unlike other movies, which obviously we all know what that is. These are supposed to be, I mean, the sci-fi factor of this movie in the book is that these have been transported from the Cretaceous period, right? Like they're just like there's been this weirdly science experiment. If you've read the book, weird science experiment that's brought these dinosaurs to Vietnam, somehow. So they're supposed to just have been walked through. So my biggest thing was let's make them as accurate as we can because they've just walked through. Now, of course, like you said, the caveat to that is when Jurassic Park came out, that was kind of like the science. You know what I mean? At the time, they had the T Rex in the right position with the tail. Before that was it was dragging on the ground in all the 80s, all the 30s to the 80s. Um, dinosaurs living in swamps and all that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, look, I wanted to make it as accurate as I could given what we know now. And even in the book, I think I spoke to Ethan, and in the book, the T Rex has feathers. And I know at the time there was a conversation about that. And then I think now the scientific community kind of thinks that probably didn't have feathers, like prehistoric planet. So I wanted to make this. Yeah, I had to make these choices. And as a director and as a filmmaker, you have to make a million choices a day, little micro decisions that all end up, adding to the sum of the whole. So yeah, look, they're as accurate as I think they can be. And also the other side is, and I read the comments online all the time because I am a fan myself. I grew up on like Star Wars forums because I'm a huge Star Wars fan. And I was on the Force.net, all these different forums, religiously. I still am actually, and I still look at everyone's comments. So for this movie is interesting because it's the first movie that I've done that's an IP that's not mine. So it's kind of interesting reading comments, both the good and bad, because it's hilarious reading some comments being like, "This movie's gonna suck," and I was like, and I and I read it, and I'm like, "Cool, man, cool. We just did all this work. I'm glad you think so." Um, so I know the internet, right? So yeah, then you got the fans of the book out there, like, oh, I hope they're accurate to the book and the comic and that. So there's that fine line between scientific accurate real life, which I want to, also making sure I please the fans of the book, which I'm going to. And also then I have to throw 10% in for me to be like, what do I want to see in this movie? Because I'm the one doing it too. So there's a couple of times I'm like, I'm gonna do this because I like it.
Were there practical effects for the dinosaurs in this movie, or was it mostly, just really CG just because it was an indie production? I'm just curious about that element.
Yep, that's been a big question online. Like anything that I could do to bring realism to the shoot for the actors, references, I did. So there were some practical effects in the movie. Um, and I've done some creature feature films in the past, and to various degrees of success. Because if you don't, sometimes I don't know. I had this conversation the other day with someone. Sometimes I feel like the internet or the culture we live in, because we all grew up in like the 80s movies like Aliens and that, which are amazing. Jurassic Park's amazing. We're an indie production, so if I could have had Stan Winston build me a T Rex, of course I would have. But I know how much that stuff costs, and there are definitely some really talented people out there, even in Australia here, that do effects and everything else. But unless you're really pushing the boundaries, unless you can really make it look 100% real, I feel like um, I feel like the question should be more, how do we make the shot real, than let's just do practical for the sake of like ticking that box of the online fan community to be like, is it practical or is it CGI? Because like in my mind, it's like, well, what's going to look the best? Like if I go make something here in Australia that is practical but looks a bit janky and looks a bit sci-fi channel-y, and we're there and we're like, it's a bit, and I've done it in the past. I've had like practical arms and half a head and things, and you got people doing the cables, and then you get in the edit and people watch it who aren't sort of film fans like ourselves, just general audiences, and they're like, it doesn't look real. It doesn't look like Jurassic Park because they have CGI and you just did these practical effects. And it's true. If it's not 100%, Stan Winston or those big names, then I ended up just having to change it in post and having to take it out and put a CG in. Then I'm paying for something on set, paying for something in post, and it just doesn't make any economical sense. In my mind, I did as much as I could practical, and there are some stuff that I did practical in the shoot that I've already gone, yeah, I don't know, because I'm holding this film, I'm holding myself to a high standard to make this the best primitive war movie it can be. Um, so there was some scenes, like it's some scenes that scared, but I got a story because it scared the bejesus out of me. We had a practical Utah raptor in some scenes. Now I don't know if you'll be able to see it in the movie. Who knows if people can pick it up, be like, "Oh, that's real," and that's whatever. But I gave the puppeteers the direction, and I closed the doors to head back through the set to go talk to the actors. And I was like, "Okay, so when this is action, you're going to pop out and you're going to do the thing." And he was just like, the puppet's like nodding its head, and I'm talking to the puppet, and not the guy. And then I walk back through the door, and then the puppet just burst through with this massive sound, and like it was right. It was right behind me, and I literally jumped and almost touched the roof and had a heart attack. Like I couldn't breathe for like 5 minutes. All the cast and crew were cracking up because I wasn't expecting it. And then when there's this practical head, like kind of here on you, and it's just like, rah! Yeah, scared the bejesus out of me. So I can attest that we did have some practical stuff on set. Now, when you have guys, as you can see in the BTS, falling down hills in the middle of valleys and everything else, how do you fit a practical T-Rex in there without airlifting it? So, what I mean? There's certain scenes in this that I think even the best Hollywood production, I would wager that how would they handle it, to be like, let's film in a cavern and let's film in some caves and let's bring in real dinosaurs. It's a puzzle piece that is definitely a head scratcher. So, answer your story. Yes, there are some, and yes, there's obviously going to be a lot of stuff where it's CG. But to me, it's how can it make the best. So even the CG shots, we're like, how can it make it look real? How can we make it look like it's there? And I think shooting on real sets really help. I can say there was nothing green screened to my knowledge in this movie. It was everything we shot was, we went to we built these Russian bases, we built these the jungles, we built the things. So every time there's a CG shot that we have to put a dinosaur in, the references are so real because it's already there, and we've got dirt flying up, and we've got things that are making it look real, and then we put the dinosaur in CG, and it's helps to have that layer of realism.
Can you tell us anything about a trailer or a release date at this time?
I can say a teaser trailer is going to come out in early 2025, and we're working on it now. And I can say that I want the film to come out before the middle of the year. What I want and what I get, it might be two different things, but I can say that's what I.
Can you bring up any like significant change going from book to movie? Aside from like a movie's a visual medium, you got to change it up a little bit.
I think there's concessions either way. I think there's some dinosaurs that are in the book that might not make the movie. There's some dinosaurs that may be in the sequel books that might make the movie. I mean, there's no point thinking about the sequel. I always think that we should just shoot the shot and make this one the best it can be. There's no point thinking about the future. Um, any major changes? Look, Ethan came over here while we were filming it, and he read the script, I think, while he was over here. And without speaking for him, he sort of rang me up, or we spoke the next day on set, and he said, a lot of people are asking me, is it like the Jurassic Park novel where it's very different book to movie, and blah, blah, blah. And I think, without speaking for him, he was pretty surprised and happy with the way that the story plays out in the script. I would think it's a pretty faithful adaptation. Given that this has to be trims and cuts and combining scenes and making it so it's a 2 hour it definitely feels like a 2 hour sort of roller coaster through the jungle. That's for sure.
I'm assuming it's Utah Raptor, but just for fun, because we're a fun community site, is that your favorite dinosaur, or do you have a different favorite?
Look, I'm gonna have to say the T Rex because I just love them. But the Utah Raptor is definitely up there. I definitely have a soft spot for the Utah Raptor, and I guess like in the book, just like I guess in the first Jurassic Park, they're definitely the villains of the piece. That's for sure. I mean, they're pretty nasty.
For people that want to do what you do and make movies, or join the art department, even, what's your biggest piece of advice to get started? How do you get in?
I always say just get on a film set because you can go to film school. I mean, I never went to film school. I mean, you can go do all that, and you can be really successful. Some people have, some people haven't. My biggest thing is just get on a film set because once you're there, if you love movies like you do and I do, because I love movies too, and I've been on plenty of film sets. And when I first got into my first Hollywood feature film, which was a military movie called The Great Raid, that sort of came out at the end of the Weinstein era, and it kind of just faded into nothingness, unfortunately, because it was actually a pretty good movie with Joseph Fiennes and that. But I remember working on that in 2002, and that was my first big Hollywood movie that I worked on. It was like $100 million movie, and I was just like blew my mind walking around just being like, this is amazing, look at all this stuff. And you have crew members who are not film fans, they're just career crew people that work on films, and not all of them, but some of them, so sitting in the back and just they're kind of like maybe the love of the films are gone, and they're just kind of like, this is a job and whatever. And I'm there like, oh my god, look at this, they're doing this and they're doing that, and I still do that to this day, even on my own film sets. I geek out at standing back and looking at what's going on and the constructed chaos that happens on the film set. So my biggest thing is just get on a film set, even if you're a runner or an art department guy, wherever you want to fit, if you think you can fit, just do it because you can stand there and you can learn way more on a film set than you can in most other, film schools or areas or online courses and that, because you're there and you're living it and you can feel the chaos and you can feel it in you, and you can watch people and you can talk to people. Like on the Pacific, I had lots of conversations with their DP, just randomly whenever I could, just staying there with a costume, and he'd be staying there waiting for a shot, and I'd be like, hey, let's talk about this camera and let's talk about what you're doing over here. And I mean, like, I really thank people for taking the time to talk to me, because it's led me to where I am today. So my thing is just to get on the film set, and if you love it, you'll find your place.
Primitive War is coming sometime next year. I'm sure we'll find out later, exactly when. But for the people following along, and the people that who their interest has been piqued by seeing this epic poster with a T Rex and a Vietnam soldier skull and helmet and stuff, what's your message to them? About coming to see this movie, and B, what do we have to look forward to?
Well, my message is that, like I said before, we're not a Hollywood film. We're a big indie production, but we care. So I hope people get out and support it when it does come out, because we're going to launch it as big as we possibly can, and I think it definitely deserves to be seen on the big screen, because I'm sitting here in my edit room watching it on my big screen, and we got a great sound mix department. They're doing it in Dolby Atmos, so we're going like all guns blazing for this to hear it, to see it. So I hope they come out and support it and follow it as the journey happens and comes out next year. And we have to look forward to is going to be a really cool, short-ish teaser trailer that's going to come out, sooner than later, followed by more BTS, followed by, main trailer, followed by then, as things happen. And we'll probably end up doing like a tour around America with, with cast and crew and special screenings, and potentially even some Dinosaur coming along for the ride, some of the Dinosaur actors coming for the ride. So we'll wait and see what happens there. But that's the plans currently. So yeah, a lot to look forward to.
All right, on the recording end, Luke, thank you for hopping on and talking with Kaiju United.
No worries, anytime.
It's a war film meets dinosaur film meets action film. It's all the best genres that we could ask for.
Prepare yourselves, it's gonna be great.
It's gonna be a great film.